Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Lifehouse. My name is Ryan. This is Kayla, Joanne, Bob. We're excited to be here with you guys. Let's sing.
As I reflect, I find perspective. They're in the best and worst days of this life. You were always on my side. You're in the pain, you're in the promise, and on the days the furnace finds my faith, you're the fourth within the flames. I don't need to know what the future says, 'cause if the past could talk, it would tell me this: my God isn't finished yet. If he did it before, he can do it again. So I trust him with what comes next. For the God I love is known for faithfulness. Yeah, my hindsight says I can trust him with what's next. For the God I know is known for faithfulness. There's more ahead than what's behind me. It's through the highs and lows and in between. God, you go ahead of me. And where you call me, I will follow. And if the water falls beneath my feet, then you pull me from the deep. I don't need to know what the future says, 'cause if the past could talk, it would tell me this: my God isn't finished yet. If he did it before, he can do it again. So I trust him with what comes next. For the God I know is known for faithfulness. Yeah, my hindsight says I can trust him with what's next. For the God I know is known for faithfulness. Whoa, 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 I don't need to know what the future says, 'cause if the past could talk, it would tell me this: yeah, my God isn't finished yet. If he did it before, he can do it again. So I trust him with what comes next. 'Cause my hindsight says I can count on it. My God isn't finished yet. If he did it before, he can do it again. So I trust him with what comes next. For the God I know is known for faithfulness.
Well, good morning, everybody. You can have a seat for just a second. I want to welcome everybody here. My name is Matt, and I am the lead pastor here at Lifehouse. And if you're online or you're in the room, we're so glad that you're with us, and especially if you're new around here. Now, here's what you need to know. We've had a lot of new people come and check out our church this summer. It's been really cool. So if you're in the room and you're new checking us out, we hope you have a great experience, or maybe you're online and you're like want to peek behind the curtain before you attend physically, we're so glad you're doing that. And our only hope and win for you is that you'd come back and maybe decide to hang out with us as a church. And if this is where you go every Sunday, we're so glad you're here with us, because we want us all of us to grow in a relationship with Jesus. And we're going to be here about an hour. We're going to sing a couple songs, and then I'm going to continue our series, It's Personal. Hopefully that's going to be helpful to you. Now here's what I know. We're about ready to wrap up July. We're heading into August, and it's been so cool. We've heard great stories about your travels. People have shared stories about traveling and water skiing and blowing out knees on water skiing for those of you that are over 50. Just all these good things that have happened this summer. But I've just noticed in the last couple weeks, at the same time, and this is just life, while there's lots of good and real fun stuff happening, there's some real tough stuff happening. And sometimes as the pastor of our church, it feels like a time for me to say, hey, I just want you to take a breath, because you're in a safe place if you have some tough things happening in your life. And we want you to know, we believe God is here. In fact, we're going to sing this song in just a second. We introduced last week that there's a line in it that says, God, I don't know what you're doing. And I want to lean into that for just a second, because maybe you're here and you're not sure what God's doing right now. Maybe you're here and you're not even sure, God, are you there? And we get that, we understand that. But the second part of that line is, I don't know what you're doing, but I know what you've done. As followers of Jesus, here's what we believe, that God gave everything to be with us, to walk with us, to love us. In fact, one of the things I used to hear as a kid is God's going out ahead of you to work through whatever's ahead of you. And I believe that for you and for me and for my kids that are all over the planet today. But I also believe God's beside you. Because not only does he want to figure out, your direction with you, but he wants to be with you. And if you're going through something that's big with your family or some kids or some health or doubts or depression or whatever it is, as we sing this next song, I just hope that you can lean into the fact that we believe God's already won. And I don't know what you're doing, but I know what you've done. And he loves you and he wants to be with you in these moments. And you're in a safe place to let God just know, maybe it's a little difficult today. We love you and we're glad you're here. Let's stand and let's sing this next song together.
This future grace that's mine today, that Jesus Christ has won, so I can face tomorrow, for tomorrow's in your hands. All I need you will provide, just like you always have. Your spirit is my help. He'll fix my eyes on Jesus Christ. I'll say that it is well. Oh, I know that it is well. I'm fighting a battle you've
all these pieces broken and scattered, in mercy gathered, mended and whole, empty-handed but not forsaken. I've been set free. I've been set free. Oh, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see you now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to You take our failures, you take our weakness, you set your treasure in jars of clay. So take this heart, Lord, I'll be your vessel, the world to see your life in me. Oh, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see you now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see you
Thank you guys so much for singing along with us. You can take your seats.
And we sing a song like that about how Jesus looks down on us in love, because we want you to know that there's a God who loves you. Jesus Christ, God's Son, looks down on us not in condemnation for what we've done or what we haven't done, but he looks down on us in love, and he offers that love to each one of us, no matter who we are, no matter what we've been through, no matter what we're going through right now. He offers that love to us. And so many people in this place have found the love of Jesus and received that love. And so many of those people are not just believing in Jesus, but they're doing something about it. They're doing something with it. Their life is better, and they're making other people's lives better as they direct people to God. So many of you, we literally have hundreds of people in this church who show up Sunday after Sunday and serve, whether it's in this room or in Kids World or as students or in the parking lot, whatever. So many people who do that. And we love our volunteers because of their commitment, and we call them heroes because we really think that they are. And there's one guy in particular I want to tell you about today. His name is Jacob Covey, and this is Jake here. And Jake's a young guy, and he has been leading groups now for quite some time. He helps out in an environment called 1829. This is Jake and a couple other people that are in this group called 1829. It's young adults, ages 18 to 29. And Jake gets to be a part of that and help create places for people to connect and grow. He also leads a small group of men. And every week he's meeting with them and helping them out. And we had one guy in his group that had this to say about Jacob. He says, Jacob comes to group prepared for open and honest conversation. His commitment and ability to create a place where we feel comfortable sharing has allowed us to become closer and dig into tough topics. And when you know, if you've been in a group, you know that one of the best parts about group is the chance to have open and honest conversations. He does that well. Another guy in his group said this. He said, Jacob has a huge heart for others and simply wants to see everyone around him growing and reaching their goals as much as he does his own. And so Jacob has a real selfless way of leading that really models the selfless way that Jesus loves us and serves us. And we're so grateful for Jacob. Can we give Jacob a round of applause for the way he serves in this church? Jake's a volunteer. He's not paid staff, just like so many of you. And in many ways, he's representative of all of the people out there. Many of you sitting in this room serve in some way. And we're so grateful for that. We just want to thank you on behalf of our staff and our church for being a part of our mission. That's to see people grow in a relationship with Jesus. And that's happening week in and week out because of people like Jacob and people like you as well. We're going to keep rolling with the rest of our service. I'm going to turn things over to Matt. He's going to wrap up our series called It's Personal.
Hi there, excuse me. Joseph? Tiffany Marie Patterson? Yeah? Okay, your boss told me you'd be here. This is just something Mr. Jackson wanted to do for you. All right, I'm just gonna, you can call her back. As long as you're honest, you have nothing to be worried about, okay? Do you like your job?
No.
Are you qualified for your job?
I'm highly qualified for my job.
Are you sure?
Yes,
Really sure?
without a doubt. Are you sure you're qualified for this job?
I'll do the question. Do you deny that you leave work early?
Yes.
So you deny.
Yes.
I do not deny. I'm confused.
Just pick one.
No.
Are you indecisive?
Yes.
That wasn't part of this. I just
Oh.
seemed like you are.
Yes.
How much time do you spend on social media during your workday?
An hour, maybe two.
Tiffany, not on Facebook?
No.
Twitter?
No.
Snapchat?
Does the HR know that you're doing
How
this?
much time do you spend on social media? Just, like give or take. Just shake that and make sure that's working. Did you complain to HR about your boss's profuse sweating?
Yes.
Did you know that was not anonymous?
No.
Is it true you're running an unapproved Etsy shop on your company's website?
Yes.
What do you sell?
Sweaters
Really?
for cats.
Stop it. I would love one. Do you have any information regarding the whereabouts of your boss's favorite coffee mug?
Yes. It's at my house.
I didn't ask where.
Sorry.
Might want to dust off that resume.
Yeah.
I would just love to put her in the lobby of our church on a Sunday morning and just ask you all questions. It's so good. And if one of my staff took my coffee mug, I would lose my mind. Anyway, it's good to have you guys here. We are wrapping up this series that's personal today. And just so you know, next week we're starting a new series that's called Mean People. So if you have to deal with mean people in your life or you know someone that does, you should invite them next Sunday. It should be super helpful. But as we wrap up today, we had this interesting statement last week, and it said that we're mostly honest with people mostly. Isn't that just so true? I mean, with people in our lives, we'll tell them most of the truth, but we don't tell them all of the truth. And the easiest low-hanging fruit is when someone says, hey, do you like this dress? Like your wife or your husband, do you like this shirt? And we're like, yeah, kind of, but we don't want to tell them the whole truth because it gets in trouble. I really don't like to hear the full thoughts on my messages because I don't want to hear the bad news. And you know how that goes. We're mostly honest with people, mostly. But what we said is our most healthy relationships, and you've seen this, are our most honest relationships. It's that weird deal that we've experienced, people that are just transparent with someone else. And maybe it's hard to be transparent with a lot of people, but with like one or two people, it just like brings them together. And there's something about them that's unique and honest and real. Several years ago, I was sitting around a table with some other pastor friends of mine, and we were on a retreat together. And the guy that was like hosting this time together, he said to these guys, what do you need to leave here and not take home with you? And it was this weird moment of honesty, because you may not know this, but sometimes people that do what I do, and I'm way fortunate with you guys because you're so kind and good to me, to be honest with you, but sometimes people are not real nice to pastors. And these were pastors of very, very large churches, and they just started to name out loud what they needed to leave at this place we were at and not take home with them. And it was hurt, and it was sadness, and it was unforgiveness, and it was this weird deal. And it was like, all of a sudden, this group of guys, there's just all men at this particular event, we're all just drawn to each other. It's like, listen, I'll stand with you in this because your honesty has done something in my own heart. It was this weird thing, and a relationships were being developed amongst some guys that weren't really good at being honest with each other. But you've seen this in the real world. And what's interesting is it doesn't just happen with other human beings, it happens with our Creator. And last week we said, until, and this is a big until, we're fully honest with God, we will not experience God fully. And it's not because God's mad at us or he's punishing us, but until we come to God and we're like, okay, God, here's what I got. You already know, but here's the truth about what's going on in my mind and my heart and my fear and my doubts. We don't get God fully. And the beautiful thing is, God desires to know us and to be known by us, because being honest with God allows you and I to have a closer relationship with God. And again, if you're new around here and you've never heard us talk about this before, we're not here just to have another religious experience. In fact, we kind of try and take the whole religion side out of this and turn towards a relationship with our Creator. That's why, like, our mission statement is to have a growing relationship with Jesus, and it's real. And today, to kind of get down to the heart of some of our struggle, is I want to talk about this idea of doubt. Let me just ask you a quick question. And if you're online, I hope you play along with this. Do you got any doubts in your life right now? Do you have any doubts with people or things? Or maybe you won't even want to say this out loud. Do you have any doubts with God? Now, here's the interesting thing about doubt. It's when what I feel obstructs what I know. And sometimes, what I know obstructs what I feel. Years ago, actually it was about 33 years ago, my wife Tina and I were dating at the time. And she decided we needed to take a break. I hate to tell that part of the story, but she said, let's take a break. This was 33 years ago. I'm like, okay, we'll take a break for the summer. We were, in different states. She was in Pennsylvania. I was in Illinois. We took a break. And, she won't tell the story this way, but she said, I thought it was time to be done. And then she came all the way from Pennsylvania to my school in Illinois to do her graduate work. So that tells you something about my wife's desire those days, right? Let me just say that again. My wife came all the way from Pennsylvania to Illinois to do her graduate work at my college. Anyway, I decided somewhere along that summer that, listen, Tina was the one. I knew it. I knew it in my heart. I knew it in my soul. And I'm just one of those kind of people, when I decide that I know something, it is a done deal. And so I was waiting for her to come back, or I was planning on meeting her at school when she came back. It was so weird. And she will tell you this story. Don't tell her I'm telling you this. She's in the building. Keep it between us, okay? So I was coming up, but I had a family funeral I had to go to, so I was a couple of days late coming back to the university when school started. And I walk into my dorm room, and my roommate said, dude, there's this gal that's been calling for you every day and asking where you were at. So just so you know, that's the table set for how she was feeling. So I decided she's the one. And so when we got back to school, I got a big bouquet of roses. I went to her apartment, knocked on the door. I said, hey, it's good to see you. These are for you. And I just went at it. I need you to know, because I know that you're the love of my life, and we're supposed to spend the rest of our life together, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make this work. This is supposed to happen. I just know it. And she said, I don't think I know it. That's what she said. She said, I don't think so. And I'm like, no. And she just like, no way. This is not happening. And so about the next 3 weeks, I just like trying to convince her, trying to woo her, trying to be nice to her, and tell her whatever I could do, because I just knew she was the one, until finally what I knew got interrupted by the way I was starting to feel, because I was starting to feel like this isn't going to work out. I'm like, okay, if she feels so strongly about that, maybe she knows something I don't know. And so I tried to be at peace with it. This is a long story. I'm getting somewhere. And so a couple days later, there's this InterVarsity is a Christian event for college kids. I showed up, and I just happened to catch a ride with another young gal. We weren't seeing each other. We just showed up there together, and she was quite attractive, and it was all good. And then we left, and Tina was there, and she left. And then the next day she called me up, and she wanted to meet, and we met. She says, why in the world did you show up at that event with that girl? That's what she asked me. And I knew. Oh, yeah. She couldn't resist all of this goodness. She just could not do it. And to make a long story really longer, 33 years later, we are married and moving forward with our lives together. But it's that weird thing. I knew, and then I didn't know because of the way I felt. And sometimes that's how we feel about God. Now you may say, well, Matt, I don't know anything about God, and that's totally fair. But some of you might say, I know something about God, but the way I feel about God is getting in the way. And here's something that's pretty interesting, that it is possible to know God. Even at times, I question whether he is even real. Do you know that? It's possible to know God or believe in God or know that there is a God, even when I question, does he even exist? Because we're all asking that question somewhere along the journey. In fact, I want to read you this quote that kind of messes me up every time I read it. And I'm not going to tell you who said this. This person says, where's my faith? Even deep down right in there is nothing but emptiness and darkness. My God, how painful is this unknown pain? I have no faith. It's a confession of honesty. Goes on. I dare not utter the words and thoughts that crowd in my heart and make me suffer untold agony. So many unanswered questions live within me. I'm afraid to uncover them. God, if you're listening, if you're there, I don't even know if you are, and I don't know if this is real, and it's just all a mess. You ever feel this way? Now you might have some ideas of who wrote this. It might surprise you who wrote this. Mother Teresa wrote this. Mother Teresa, one of the heroes of our faith, one of the people that gave everything for her Heavenly Father, reached moments in her life where she's like, God, I don't know if I have faith. I don't know if you're real. I don't know if this is going to work out. She was a hero, and in crisis, she felt this way, and yet she was able just to say to God, and then the rest of the world, there were times, God, I don't even know if you're paying attention. And her doubt was real. And doubt, it can feel like a barrier to a relationship with God. I don't know if you've read this, but in April of next year, there's going to be this massive eclipse. And one of the best places to watch the solar eclipse, like it's on April 8th, which happens to be my birthday. That's weird for me, is going to be Van Wert, Ohio. And apparently, like 1 million people are going to show up in our county. So get ready. 1 million people are coming to Van Wert. And you're going to actually understand what traffic is in Van Wert, Ohio for the first time. But you know what's going to happen if you know anything about a solar eclipse. There's the sun and there's the earth, and the moon is going to move between the sun and the earth. And we're going to be ready for it, and hopefully you won't get blinded. And I'm not even sure, is that even real? Do you actually get, so anyway, but think about if it was 1,000 years ago, and you're just hanging out in your backyard, and all of a sudden, the sun's there, and it disappears. 1,000 years ago, without the science we know now, you would have been tempted to say, I know there's a sun there, but from what I can tell, the sun's gone. It's disappeared. It's not coming back. And there's moments in our faith. There's moments in our new faith. And there's moments in our trying to seek out and discover faith that it feels like God's just disappeared. And often it's because something gets in the way. What comforts me in this is people like Mother Teresa, like Jesus' own disciples that felt this way at times about Jesus, about the character we're going to talk about, David, that in the midst of his doubt, he questioned, God, are you real? Are you showing up? I'm not going to dismiss my doubt. I'm not going to gloss over. I'm not going to tell myself everything's going to be okay. I'm not going to look at people and say, yeah, I'm living my best life. I'm living my best life when I know I'm not living my best life. And don't we do that? I'm just living my best life. No, you're not, and you know you're not. You just say it because you don't want to identify the problems that are stirring up in your soul. And this is David. David that saw God guide that rock through the air that struck Goliath in the head and killed that massive giant when David was just a boy. David that had to run from King Saul. To ultimately, God delivered David from King Saul's hand. David that was a warrior king that won so many battles under God's strength. He had moments where he questioned God's pure existence. And one of those, and maybe you can identify with this, hope this isn't too fragile for you, is when David lost a child. That he was partly responsible for the outcome of losing that child. But he lost a child and he was absolutely devastated. And when David was devastated, you know what he said to God? You know what he prayed to God? You know what his conversation was with God? How long, Lord? I'm questioning you in this moment. How long is this going to hurt? How long are you going to feel absent? How long? And maybe you're here and you're in a stage of how long? I'm going through some stuff. How long? And here's the tough news, but this is real news, and we tried to be real around here. If you're not in a hard place, you've just come out of a hard place, or you're about to go into a hard place. It's the rotation of the broken world we live in, and this is a real thing. He says, how long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? This is a precious passage of scripture for me because, doing ministry and being a pastor for as long as I have, I've done a lot of funerals. And I almost always read this because I've sat in rooms with people that have lost a 95-year-old grandfather, and it's hard, but it's not as hard as it is when you lose a spouse in your 50s. Or you lose a child or an unborn child that means the world to you. And I've read this over and over in the presence of people that are hurting and mourning, and I've said to them just about what I'm going to say to you, and that is you have permission to say to God, how long? God, I'm looking right at you, and I wondered if you're there, if you're absent. My heart is breaking, and if you're ever asking the question, is it okay to do that? Apparently, David would say, yeah. Because some of us were taught growing up that if you're this gut level honest with God, just look up for the lightning to strike. Lightning did not strike David. He was trying to get to the bottom of what was going on in his soul with his heavenly Father. He didn't want to miss God, but he had doubts because he couldn't see the moon had moved in front of the sun for him. And he uses this interesting phrase, how long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? And this is so interesting for me, and you've heard me say this way too many times. I won't be long in this, but this word wrestle, because I was a wrestler in college and high school, this is so interesting. I wrestle with this, and if you know anything about wrestling matches last about 6 minutes. In college, they're 7 minutes long. And at the end of a full-go 7-minute wrestling match, you got nothing left. You are exhausted. It's so weird. A wrestler will train for months for 7 minutes of competition. Implication here is, God, I'm running out of steam. I'm not sure I can keep struggling with my thoughts and my emotions and my heart. And again, maybe you're there right now. And God would just simply say, yeah, I want you to bring that struggle to me. Your emotions are winning. I want you to bring that to me. And if you're like, God, have you gone crazy? Do you care? Are you absent? Are you weak? I want you to bring that to me. Is your fear crippling you? I think God is saying, before you run out of gas, bring that to me. And even when you run out of gas and exhaustion catches up to you, bring that to me. He goes on. He says, how long will my enemy triumph over me? And I love that thought. I got an enemy. And obviously David had physical enemies that wanted to kill him. We don't have much of that really in our safe world, which is pretty safe at the time. But he had all kinds of enemies, guilt and doubt and fear. And I thought about that for us this morning. I mean, you don't have the Syrians trying to kill you, but what is or who is, next slide, your enemy right now? For you. What's your enemy? And have you even identified it? Have you told anybody? Have you told God? And maybe for you, your biggest enemy right now is just doubt. And we were taught you don't doubt, because if you let just an ounce of doubt in your life, then you lose all your faith. But what if you're losing it anyway? I mean, maybe your enemy right now is simply depression. And we weren't supposed to talk about that in church, in the olden days, but we actually have permission to talk about depression and anxiety. God, I need to bring this to you. I can TikTok it, I can medicate it. I'm not saying that's all bad. Don't misquote me on that. But as followers of Jesus, the invitation is, would you bring it to me? Sadness? Right now you're just in a season of sadness, and maybe your sadness you blame God for a little bit. I mean, you wouldn't say that, but you blame God. David would say, how long, God, are you going to let me be sad? I just feel so unworthy right now. I haven't done what I thought I was going to do. I'm not winning, and other people are winning. And God, I'm doubting you're with me. They keep telling me at church that you're for me. I don't feel like you're for me, and I just need you to know. And again, if this feels so irreverent, I understand. But the point is to get to a place where we come back to trust in our Heavenly Father. David gets more direct. He says, look on me and answer, Lord my God. You're still my Lord, you're still my God. I haven't given up on that, but I need you to look at me. When our kids were little, we had this really interesting way to talk to our kids when we really wanted them to listen, because Jacob, our oldest, he's an engineer, but he has that weird engineer's mind where he's just all over the place. You got a kid like that? I mean, you're trying to talk to him and they're looking at the ceiling and at their toes, and he's this weird, beautiful kid. And I would say, Jake, put your hands on my face. And Jake would go, okay, Daddy. And he'd put his hands on my face and he'd hold my face. And when he held my face, he would listen to me. Pro tip, parent. You want your kids to listen, put your hands on Daddy's face. And it was a connection where they would listen. David plays a role reverse with God. It's like he's like, God, put your hands on my face. I need you to listen to me. I remember years ago, we were at a youth gathering, and I got on stage with this older student pastor. And there's a bunch of young men in the auditorium. It was a sanctuary at the time, and they had hats on. And a lot of these kids weren't church kids. They didn't know the rules that, typically you take your hat off when you walk into a church sanctuary. If you have yours on, do not worry about it. But this student pastor, he's about 40 years old at the time, I was 25, just rips into all these boys for being irreverent in God's house. And I just looked at him and I thought, and I'm all for respect and honor. That's actually a big thing for me. But I wondered, hey, what did you just teach these men about God? That he's mad at them because they walk in a man-made building with their hat on? See, that's what some of us were taught. You just can't approach God real. David goes, God, put your hands on my face. I'm talking to you. And then his stature changes just a little bit. He says, give light to my eyes or I will sleep in death. I said to my daughter Megan once, this sounds like you when you were 13. I'm gonna die, Dad. I don't have the right shoes, Dad. Or it sounds, and she said, well, Dad, it sounds like a 53-year-old man trying to do a workout that he shouldn't do. So I'm gonna die, I'm out of gas, right? Yeah, and for most of us, when we say this to God, we're exaggerating. But God, unless you fix it, it feels like I'm gonna die. I just need you to know this is where I'm at. I'll sleep in death, goes on, and my enemy will say I've overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. It's like David uses a different approach, and he does this in the Psalms. It's like, God, if you don't save me, you're gonna look bad. So I'm gonna try this tactic. I'm your boy. I'm the guy that's after your own heart, and if you don't do something, I'm manipulating you, God. I'm bargaining with you, which never works with God, but David does it anyway. It's so honest. You're going to look bad if you don't rescue me. He holds nothing back. And here's what I think David understood, that honesty with God creates a relationship strong enough to bear the weight of doubt. That if we can bring our doubt to God, even our negativity and our frustration and our lack of belief, but it's honest, it starts to build a relationship that we can withstand those moments of doubt. And David, it feels like, doesn't want any barriers in his life. And I just need you to know, if you feel like you've drifted from God, and part of it has to do with doubt, or like in that secret place in your mind when you're trying to pray and you're like, God, I'm not even sure you're there. Sometimes I feel the same way. And it's my job to lead you guys, and this is your pastor. We're all in this together, and God would just simply say, I know, come on. Bring your doubt to me. Even if you have to yell at me, even if you have to be loud, you can always come back around and apologize, and I would urge you to do that at some point, because that's honoring God. But in the moment, it is better. It is better to tell God about your doubt than drift away. Because God is trying to extend a time where we'll turn back to him. Because you may know this, there'll be a time at the end of our lives, there'll be no time to turn to him. So it's better to fully turn with all our frustration, anger, joy, pain, love, sin, than miss it. And God doesn't want us to miss it. And David, I love this, he didn't miss it. Because in the middle of all this frustration, he remembers something about God. He said, I trust in your unfailing love. I'm circling back. I've got some clarity, and I trust in your unfailing love. And this phrase, unfailing love, in the ancient Hebrew language, which is in the Old Testament, is this Hebrew word. It's called hesed. And I think I got this right. I'm no Hebrew expert. But 250 times the word hesed is in the Old Testament scriptures, and David loved to use this word. It's hard to translate, but it basically means love, generosity, and trust. God, I know that you've never written a check that didn't bounce. I know that. I know it. I don't feel it right now, but I know that. God, I know you have never failed the people you love. It feels like you are, but I know you haven't. God, I know you're faithful. God, I feel your hesed. I'm trusting in your hesed, your love, generosity, and the fact that I can trust you. That's why he said this, but I trust. In your unfailing love, my heart rejoices in your salvation. And this word salvation is so beautiful. You see, salvation for David was something he was looking forward to because there was a promise of a Messiah that would come and take away the sin of the world. And he kind of knew what that looked like, but he didn't know fully what it looked like for us. Our salvation is not what we look forward to, it's what we would look back to. And it's when Jesus showed up on the planet and God gave everything he had for a sinful, wayward, dark, lost people for salvation. And all of a sudden, this word hesed, that means love, generosity, and trust, was equated now to Jesus. Let me trust in your unfailing love, your generosity, the fact that I can trust you. Oh, wait a minute. That's Jesus who died for my sin when I could not die for my own sin. David was remembering what we get to remember every day. He was looking forward to what we get to remember every day of our lives. And I love how David wraps this up. He says, I will sing. I'm going to sing about this. I will sing of the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. And so, David, what you're telling me is at the same time that you can have doubts and fears and frustrations with God, and you can sing about God's goodness, that's not even, how does that even work? And the reason that's a problem for us is we are zero-sum people. Like it's either all the bad or it's all the good. And here's the truth. If this is gonna work for us, our faith, all the good and all the bad have to work at the same time. Because if I'm all the bad, I forget what is good and God is doing, I'm lost. But if it's just all the good and I'm ignoring the bad, I'm not even being real and genuine. I'm certainly not being honest, and I can't have a real relationship with God. And so David would look at you and say, you know what I do when I'm hurting? When I'm sad, I'm doubting, my faith is falling away. Baby, I sing. You ever had someone say that to you? I just sing, or I say it out loud, or I read it out loud, or remind myself of God's goodness and his unfailing love for me and for you. Which really means, if you're paying attention, you got options. And aren't options a problem? I mean, when you got options and you pull up to Subway and they ask you what you want on your sandwich, this happens to me, I don't know, I'm hungry. It happens to me every time, like, what do you want? And I freeze in what I want. And I either order what I always get, or it takes me 10 minutes, because options freak me out a little bit. Because what if it's too much of this and too much of that? And please don't put pickles on it, because that is from the devil. Don't put pickles on anything. I don't know how I'm gonna get off on this. But options are troubling for us, because we just want to be told this is the only way you can do it. But it doesn't answer all the questions. And your first option is this: you can wait to be honest with God until you have your questions answered. Hey, just a heads up, if you wait to be honest with God and connect with God and be close to God until your questions are answered, this is really strong. You're gonna be on your deathbed not believing in God. And my friends, that's a problem. If our hope and our salvation is in Jesus. If you wait to get everything figured out and all your questions answered, you will wait the rest of your life and it will not all come, because you will always have questions. This is just part of the gig. Or, here's a good option. I like this option. Be honest with God about your unanswered questions. Just be really honest with God. God, I got a question about my dad that wasn't a good dad. And I need to know, God, why did that happen? And maybe I'm blaming you or something, but I just need to know. I need to ask you about my career failing, because it feels like a death in my life. Maybe you're a college student and you're about ready to go back to your second year of college, and you grew up in the church and you believed in God, and you went off to college, and some science teacher made you all turned upside down about creation. And you were told something about creation that didn't line up with your science teacher, who was so smart, said, and now you're doubting creation, but now it's making you doubting the creator, and now you're doubting Jesus, and you're about ready to walk away from your faith. God, I got questions about creation. And this is what some of us were told when we questioned the creation story. Well, if you question one part of it, you question all of it, and you don't believe, and you can't be a Christian. I hope that's not true. I hope I can ask some questions of a God that's patient and knows. So college kids, don't give up on your faith yet, just because you have questions. Maybe for some of you, and this has been on my heart heavy lately, your questions around, you've seen abuse in the church, or you've read about it, or manipulation, or some pastor like me do some awful thing to someone else. And you're about ready to give up on God because some men, they're just men or women, have done some awful things. You got to tell God about that. God, why would you let this happen? How's this happening? But I ain't giving up on you, Jesus. I'm not quitting on you, because I know broken people are all around me. And here's the truth: at the end of the day, you look at one in the mirror every morning. But God, I got questions, so I just need to talk to you about them. And you may not get clear-cut answers, but wow, it's good to talk to God about your problems, about your struggles, about your doubts. And just talk to him about all your doubts. Be honest with all your doubts, because doubt is a barrier that's in the middle of our relationship with God. It's the moon that blocks the sun from the earth, and the earth goes dark. Doubts do that to us. And even though you may know something is there, sometimes you forget because it doesn't feel like it's there. See, being honest about your doubt reveals to God what's true about you. And here's what I love about God. Your doubts will reveal what's true about you. God, I'm doubting you because I got a failed dream in my life. Can you just imagine Jesus sitting across the coffee table from you and smiling and going, I want to know about your failed dream. Tell me. God, I got a family that's not working out. Jesus, with a heart full of love, going, okay, let me be a part of this conversation with you. It reveals something about you. Your doubts reveal something about you to God. God, I don't know why sickness had to take someone I love. I know. Let's talk about that. Let's work through that together. I am terrified, Jesus, where our world is going, because some of you are so afraid of the direction of our world, the direction of our country, who's the next president. And I think Jesus, he wouldn't scold you. He just said, come on, let's figure out how we can figure out trust between us together. And being honest, and I love this, out loud reminds you and reminds me what is true about God. It's why sometimes I got to say the hard stuff to God. And at the same time, baby, you got to sing about it. You got to tell God, all my hopes and all my dreams I'm giving to you. I'm trusting you. God, you've been faithful. You've been faithful in my past. I can look back and I can see where you showed up and you saved me and you rescued me and you put things back together. And I'm going to sing about that while I struggle with this at the same time. And if you're here today, if you're online and you're not sure you believe or you've never experienced God's faithfulness, the invitation is to step towards it. Because you're surrounded by a whole lot of people that are broken, imperfect people that have discovered that God can be trusted and that Jesus ultimately, when he went to the cross and was crucified and beaten terribly, he was our hesed. He was God's love, God's generosity, God's faithfulness to us. And he gave everything for us. And sometimes, even if you don't believe, but especially if you believe, you gotta sing. You gotta say it out loud. You gotta read it out loud. You gotta say it to somebody else. You gotta show up. This is hard. And serve somebody. But God, I don't feel like serving somebody. I know, but that's how you reconnect. You gotta forgive somebody, but I don't feel like it. I'm mad at you, God, and you want me to, yeah, I do. Because I want you to be reminded of how I forgave you. I want you to be able to say, God would say to you and me, but I trust in your unfailing love, God. I trust in your hesed for me. And my heart rejoices in your salvation. Just real quick, just the only hope I think we have of life with God is salvation through Jesus. He shed blood on the cross so I didn't have to shed my blood on the cross. It's amazing. I will sing, because sometimes you got to sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. If you're frustrated with God, if you have doubts with God, you need to tell him and be just as honest as you can. Even if you've decided, I don't believe in you anymore, it's worth taking another circle back to him and saying, I don't believe in you anymore, but I'm telling you. And then I would suggest at the same time, sing, say it out loud, read it out loud, say it to another person, and remember God's unfailing love, because that's what David did when he lost some really big things in his life. And in just a second, we're going to sing this song. We have sang this song for years. We're going to sing it because it's about trust and it's about, God, you have my dreams and you have my plans, and I'm trusting you. And I'm going to follow you. And you are all invited, every single person, no matter where you are in your faith journey, to say to God, I'm trusting the best that I can, even if it's the tiniest little bit, or it's all I've got. I'm trusting it with you, God. And I think he's here, he's with you, and he loves you. And he will journey to the place where you can come back and say, I trust in your unfailing love. Your Jesus are my hesed in my life. Let me pray for you, and then we're going to sing together. Heavenly Father, these are hard conversations with you, and they feel dangerous, and they expose us in so many ways. But I don't know a better way to come back to you but to be real with you. And at the same time, God, let us honor you and trust in your faithfulness and saying it out loud and singing it out loud. And maybe even in the next few moments, the people that are hanging together with us this morning that feel like their faith is weak, their hope is weak, would be strengthened by our trust in who you are. Thanks for loving us, Jesus. Thanks for loving David, who didn't really deserve to be loved, and you loved him anyway. Help us to know you and be known by you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Let's stand, let's sing Trust in You.
With every breath, with every word I speak, with every step, with every heartbeat, Jesus, let it be for you only, my whole life, all for your glory. With every breath, with every word I speak, with every step, with every heartbeat, Jesus, let it be for you only, my whole life, all for your glory. My life is in your hands, trust it all, I trust it all to you, my dreams and all my plans, I trust it all, I trust it all. Whenever I'm changed, I'll never be the same, because of your love, because of your love. Forever I'm changed, I'll never be the same, because of your love, because of you, Jesus. Whoa, because of you, Jesus. Whoa, for all my days, God, you are my God. I give you all, my heart is open wide. Jesus, let it be for you only, my whole life, all for your glory, all for your glory. My life is in your hands, trust it all, trust it all to you, my dreams and all my plans, trust it all, I trust it all. Forever I'm changed, I'll never be the same, because of your love, because of your love. Forever I'm changed, I'll never be the same, because of your love, because of you, Jesus. Because of you, Jesus. You are everything, everything. You are all I need, all I need. I am forever in love with you, forever in love with you. Are everything, everything. You are all I need, all I need. I am forever in love with you, forever in love with you. Are everything, everything. You are all I need, all I need. I am forever in love with you, forever in love with you. Are everything, everything. You are all I need, all I need. I am forever in love with you. My life is in your hands, I trust it all, I trust it all to you, my dreams and all my plans, trust it all, I trust it all. Forever I'm changed, I'll never be the same, because of your love, because of your love. Forever I'm changed, I'll never be the same, because of your love, because of you, Jesus. Because of you, Jesus. Thank you very much for singing with us today. You guys have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next week.